voter ID requirements, coal power for the military, and a crackdown on payments to the dead. It was a packed week on Capitol Hill. First, a bill that's now law. The Ending Improper Payments to Deceased People Act requires the Social Security Administration to share death records with the federal Do Not Pay system, the government's central tool for blocking improper benefit payments. The bill sets a high evidentiary standard before someone can be officially recorded as deceased and requires agencies to be notified if a person is wrongly flagged as dead. The president also signed an executive order, his 240th of this term, directing the Department of War to prioritize coal-fired electricity for military installations, citing grid reliability and national security. The order authorizes long-term power purchase agreements with coal generation facilities and designates coal as essential to national and economic security. The most controversial item this week, the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, the SAVE Act, passed the House 218 to 213. Almost entirely along party lines. The bill would require documentary proof of U.S. citizenship, like a passport or birth certificate, to register to vote in federal elections. It also mandates photo ID at the polls and requires states to cross-check voter rolls against a federal immigration database. Supporters say it closes a real loophole. Critics argue it will make it harder for eligible Americans to vote. The bill now heads back to the Senate. The House also passed the Housing for the 21st Century Act, a broad housing reform package. It directs HUD to develop zoning reform guidelines, covering things like parking minimums, building heights, and accessory dwelling units, and launches pilot programs for pre-approved home designs and small-dollar mortgages. It also streamlines environmental reviews for infill housing projects and expands FHA loan limits. The House also passed a resolution to terminate the national emergency on tariffs against Canada that President Trump declared on February 1, 2025. Under the National Emergencies Act, Congress has the authority to end emergency powers. The measure passed the House, but would still need Senate action to take effect. Also, passing the House this week, the D.C. income tax disapproval resolution passed both chambers, blocking a D.C. tax law. The Protect Taiwan Act would authorize excluding Chinese representatives from major international financial bodies if China threatens Taiwan. The Brave Burma Act tightens sanctions accountability on Burma's military junta. And the Undersea Cable Protection Act streamlines permitting for fiber optic cables in national marine sanctuaries. Finally, 7 resolutions were enacted this week. A joint session of Congress was scheduled for the State of the Union. The Senate designated January as National Stalking Awareness Month and National Trafficking Prevention Month. A Holocaust remembrance ceremony was authorized in the Capitol's Emancipation Hall. 3 Senate staffers were authorized to testify in a federal criminal case. And yes, the Senate officially approved a bipartisan dog parade in the Hart Building on February 25th. That's the week of February 9th. A signed law, a major executive order, and a voter ID bill heading back to the Senate. We'll keep tracking what happens next. If you found this useful, subscribe so you don't miss next week's breakdown.